Good afternoon, Abbotsford residents. I'm Mr. Pelican. I'm running for the Mayor of Abbotsford to bring the RCMP into Abbotsford. I make many podcasts showing how grateful we are to the men and women in the mission RCMP, a very small detachment that put the wheel in motion on the insider trading. So I want to outline something before I begin today's podcast. The Abbotsford police have to, the men and women that call themselves police, were disgusting human beings and they have to be all kicked out. It was an elite establishment that was feeding out of the top of the trough and nobody else could challenge it. And they were all coercing and working it together. And it was Darren Braun, the economic development officer, Henry's own son, leaked and showed how Ed Fast was involved, Mike DeYoung was involved, the Chamber of Commerce was involved, and it showed Gabriel Electoralists, and then it showed the Chamber of Commerce, Craig Toes, and how Vicky Hopes, and he linked the ties to Rick Rakes, and Rick Rakes being Henry's best friend, and Rick Wake's wife being Henry's wife's best friend, Tyler Olson, and everybody. It was a business plan, but they called themselves politicians. But they used the Abbotsford private police, and I believe this is why the Surrey mayor don't want private police, to increase their richnesses, hold them in power, and threaten anybody that stood forward. So I want to outline something to you. You see now, since I've been podcasting, that you see that crime has dropped, you're the extortion ring and everything. We have to think every day what these men did that we thought we could trust as police officers for our safety and paid them good. Without the help of Darren Braun's information and me going to the RCMP, the Abbotsford police probably shut a lot of people's mouths and victims, and a lot of cases weren't charged, and covered up a lot of stuff for their friends. That there is clear. When you go as far as covering attempted murder, using the task force to threaten, ring me and everything. So before I begin, I want to tell you why. You see me every time I podcast, why they're on me. This is the wisdom of the best. What they did not know is they thought I was a lonely little guy all by myself with a few Abbotsford homeowners, the EDA of Ed Fast, the federal conservatives, and now Sook's EDA, and a bunch of homeowners and a little grief. What they didn't know is how big my hands were, how many people I could bring in from outside the city of Abbotsford to help on developments, on the scams, everything. Henry used these city officials, which called themselves engineers, city lawyer, and city manager, to screen and block the general community, and then used the rag of Vicky Hopes to paint the picture. The RCMP knew to look right by that. So I want to tell Colin Watts, you got to be handed your ass to you. There's not a one man that can stand up in the Abbotsford Police Department and say, I've worked with Mike Sir for 25 years. He's been here. Mike Sir was a great police chief. He led Abbotsford through some of the hardest times. None of them. They can't defend him. Another thing the RCMP and political politicians and Crown prosecutors look for, when your own families can't defend you, like my son stood up, my 18-year-old son, to help run the jobs and everything when Henry hit and ran me. And they look at your wives, when your wives go, like Ross Seaman's wife not coming out. My husband's a really good guy. He's a church Bible thumping going weasel. She knew. When her father-in-law sat with me to try to do damage control, Ross was loaded for the official community plan. So let me explain it to you. I want you to hear it from me. Why are the Abbotsford police after me? So I want to make it clear. I do not go around and sleep with their wives because you saw them. They picked up the prostitute they might have sexual transmitted diseases. And I don't hit on them and that have no ties to them. But why are they after me? I'm on no criminal ring, and you can see that and that because the RCMP would be the guys that are after me. Let me tell you why. They know the inside informants of the Abbotsford city and officials and everybody else from local mayors from outside of the other municipalities. With the RCMP say stay with it, eventually they feel sorry for you and their heart speaks, even though their brain says I got to cover up for Henry. And their heart comes forward, knowing my life was almost ended and seeing the acts that I post of the Abbotsford men, and we're a police officer, we can get away with any dirty shit. And the accountability of Henry Loden, his brother, the board and everything. That ring of them people that I showed you increase their richnesses. That is why Greg Toes took that risk. That is why Vicky Hopes took that risk. That is why Mike Sir used the task force cover the hit and run. That there is exactly what Carney said. It's organized crime, find the money. This is why Brad Viss knows how responsible of the federal EDA of Ed Fast witnessing it and knowing about it, and he can't come forward because Pierre Poilievre knows sooner or later Brad Viss is going to be wrecked. He ain't going to run it. And so they figured that if they retire, now we call quits. You can't come after me. We got to go after him the same as we do when somebody kills somebody. We keep hunting and hunting and going after him. But if we had proper law enforcement like the RCMP, they would have stopped it immediately. These were friends of buddies, and that's how they could do it. So why did they smash my camera? Why did they take reaction to me? The only reason you could, the only reason you should, is if I was directly involved in having affairs with their wives. And that never took place. That never took place. Not a one. And the leading investigators, top, this is top shit. This shit is so top, even top doesn't know. That had a sworn duty that figured, well, they could bluff everybody and lie. Knew that they get punished harder. And I want them, ladies and gentlemen, in social media, to feel what Abbotsford residents and I had to go through when I stayed at the RCMP in Mission because they were going to frame me. I want them to feel, as a top investigator, that you're dragged before our courts, then sentenced to prison, where you're threatened, knowing you're a cop and everything. The responsibility is very heavy when you're in that driver's seat. That is why I showed you the professional distance and the professionalness of the WCB investigators versus the Abbotsford junk, the garbage that sits on Alex Mitchell's lap, and the junk and the manipulation with other police forces getting here, and their bloody pal shit, and they're crying. They had a good plan of doing it. They had a good plan. But they had no way of winning because Darren Braun was the resources and the engine of it all, basically taking it all and wrecking them all. You might say he felt pity of what was taking place to the Abbotsford residents. And you know you need the RCMP because it's got big wigs, Ed Fast, Henry Brown, and everybody. And this was a money gravy train. The train tycoon was in. So why did they attack me? They know the Abbotsford city, inside the city, from the works yard, from somebody in the Abbotsford police, from everywhere, even in Vicky Hopes' newspaper, on the Chamber of Commerce, people that go there and are on the Chamber of Commerce, they know that I don't have to go. And I don't go to any of these meetings, but they know there's many people that go, and they're bringing it all back to me. Solid proof, not hearsay. So the Abbotsford police been told that everywhere Mr. Pelican podcasts, we got to shut him down. Why? You'll see the opposition of the BC Conservatives, people see it, that don't live in Abbotsford. You'll see the RCMP and CSIS see it. You'll see Dallas Brody see it. You'll see very qualified, high lawyers and prosecutors see it. You'll see the general public see it, and they'll know. So what they want to do is go smash Mr. Pelican's camera and his phone and terrorize him and his residents. But I already knew this long ago. The RCMP made it clear to me, make sure I have witnesses and dignitaries so they can't frame and trap, because you're exposing the criminal acts like the development signs. This is bigger and a larger than fentanyl. And I showed you that Rob Isaac and what Magna did. When you could look away as head bylaw and get people deadly sick. And when I went out there to podcast that, rather than a moral act take place, they had the Abbotsford police smash my phone. Why? These orders, not in my opinion, you know these orders came down from the top through to the Abbotsford police. And who sits at the top of the police? The mayor himself on the private police. And the RCMP, I guarantee you when I transformate him to the mayor, I'll have nothing to do with them. And when they screw up, they'll be on the table. They can't do this. The mayor himself calls that out. So they looked at Ross Siemens' whole shit as I podcast out with many videos. They looked at the targeted of smashing my camera and everything. And city staff and people working in the city said, Ross watched your podcast where the cop smashed your phone and your camera. And still, as his responsibility, even though he hates me and he's being pounded because I want him to do his time in jail, he has a responsibility to own it, and he didn't, because he never ran the city. So why were they doing it? For this. When I showed you the development sign, they know, everybody knows it's cheating, fraud, racketeering, and they know the Abbotsford police now have to be paid off, and engineers. So they bought a few officers like Keelan Olenoff and their goons. And they said, drop the bloody videos and the lawsuits or I will personally effing bury you. Keelan Olenoff. There's other guys that knew that this was wrong, didn't have say in the police department because they're told to shut down because the top did. Said, go to the RCMP. Go to the RCMP. Keelan Olenoff goes to Henry's house every day to take his bloody orders, and he doesn't work for Henry. He's supposed to work for Abbotsford taxpayers and be a cop. And they knew this. So that means that whole police department got owned. That's why I tell you it's very serious. It's very serious. When I stood on the world stage, said all of them got to go. They have a sworn oath, and all of them got to go. No pity that they can solve gangs. That's all their bullshit. That's all their bullshit. So let me tell you, I'm running for your mayor, and I want all my young youth and families to hear this for me. As your mayor, the Condo market, because I worked with big developers. I told you, Wall Financial, Aquilini, Mike Dakota, Stuart Olson, everybody. The condo market in Vancouver has collapsed. The economy is collapsing and it's turning down. These shithole guys that changed the zoning, Rob Funk with Henry Brown, his partner, from 200 to 455, then have the Abbotsford police threatening me constantly, so I didn't run the podcast, that it was insider trading. He put the mayor and the council right on his project and he ran them, even Mark Warkentine. So now the council had to vote their way and shut down the general public. This was a slam dunk the little mob had. They were feeding. Oh, the trough was so good. It was so good. That's why they got to be wiped out. And they got this. But the condo market in Vancouver has collapsed. As a young family starting out, I will advise you as your mayor candidate right now, I will advise you right now not to purchase any condo in Abbotsford, especially from Ron Funk. Not to buy it or go into it. Why? Because right now with the condo market down, you're going to pay $650,000 and you'll get the financing. They'll help you get finance. They'll help you get it all up. And when you go to remortgage in 2 years, that piece of property there will be worth $200,000 only. And you'll suffer a tremendous loss. So I want to be the mayor that makes sure young youth are not stuck and you're financially under burden. And they'll lower your deposit to put in there and they'll do everything. They'll have their own finance team. The realtor will be involved. And they'll blind suck you. And I want to make sure that I can look at other cities and know what's coming for my city, so my young youth that are trying to get up with a small family don't. You're better off to tag up with your father-in-law, mother-in-law and go buy a house, because you'll always have the equity in it. So when you go to remortgage, it'll be worth nothing, completely zero. And this there, you got to be, as your mayor, I got to be advised of it, because a lot of people won't be able to remortgage. The bank won't hold it up for you, because the bank will say, look, you bought it at $650,000 off the Funkster Meister, the great Meister, but it's only worth $200,000 on your second remortgage. And now you're in financial trouble, and that there will be a big problem, big problem. You'll be landing up paying $600,000 to the Funkster Meister and his line of credit in the bank. That is a guarantee. And you'll pay that the rest of your life till it's paid off. But when you go to try to sell it, you'll only have $200,000. And I don't want that to happen to young youth and families that are starting out. I want you to thrive. And then you won't have the jobs of it. So I want to be here for you as your mayor candidate saying, no, this is going to stop. Your best is now to get in the housing market and tag up with a little bit of your family, or the townhouse market, but not this shit condo market, because Vancouver's a prime example. And this is what a good mayor would do. And this is what we should do. But this one was illegal. So I want to end the story by telling you, this is why the Abbotsford Police, when every time you see me podcast, I'm here. A lot of people, as David Evie says, it's a conspiracy. A lot of people see me every time I podcast and they see the Abbotsford Police. You know, I drive a Dodge truck, one of the latest ones, and you know they're tied to GPSing, and the cops can GPS them, and they can GPS your phone where you are. So if you phone 911 and you're lost in the bush and you don't know your locations, within minutes the cops are there. And I have done this quite a few times with 911, and they know where you are and they can find your location. There's not speculation. Everybody says I should dump my Dodge truck or pull the tracking device on the antenna and change the phone, because the reason they're chasing me, as soon as I show that organized crime, somebody owned my Abbotsford Police. Ain't that right? Now, my Abbotsford Police are going to sit down in another meeting with Colin Watts and have a briefing of how to smash Mr. Pelican and how to, rather than own the responsibility, clear it up and try to fire out the assholes that were doing it all and not listening to their shit because they've took the company to a low that's never going to come back. And you know, you first of all need help with the RCMP, but here's a bigger kicker. When the Abbotsford Police are in trouble and Colin Watts is being pushed on to solve crime and he can't do it, you know what he does? The crying baby langs up with his penguins, his juicy penguins that were on the cars, dumping and jumping, and they beg the community to come forward with any help and any evidence. When the RCMP mission said take the Abbotsford homeowners and witnesses in front of the police building in the middle of the winter to speak to the police board so they could have the criminal reports, the signed reports, and that, Abbotsford Police didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know, but here they had the perfect gift. They didn't have to beg the community. Everybody walked up and was willing to sign affidavits and statements. So charges flew on Henry, charges flew at Mike DeYoung at fast. They didn't know what to do. It was a way of the RCMP guys in mission showing that now the Abbotsford top of the police department did get owned. And the mayor was controlling them because he set up the whole board and everything. Then they made it a little easier for me. They didn't look like Abbotsford was crazy or Abbotsford was nuts. They said challenge the mayorship and Henry will have to load Ross. Blocking a candidate from everything, and he did it with Dave Sadu and everything, and you saw the Tracy Road. But I'm being lobbied on very hard and I'm being pushed every day. And many people are getting on me every day and saying, you need to bring one BC Dallas Brody, and you need to bring her in to talk to the federal conservative EDA that gets back to Pierre Poilievre, because Dallas Brody will live broadcast them with all them people and witnesses, just like John Arastad, my very good friend, was in my house and at our houses, and the Abbotsford Police didn't know that, and many other dignitaries. And you need to bring her in so she can walk into the ledge and say, Mr. Speaker, the money into Abbotsford on Andy and Dave Sadu's property is insider trading, and it was special refer treatment, a lifts to land, and the province dumped it in Vitalis. They lifted Andy Sadu's piece of property. They allowed the zoning with their friends in the city, the slate. They used the Abbotsford Police when Mr. Pelican went to podcast on the bill, on the rezoning permits and everything to run him riot. I showed you yesterday a video with developers in my experience. If you hide your development sign, let me put it in layman's terms, you want to go down with your father-in-law and your wife and you want to build a new house. You got to go into the city, you need a set of drawings, you need to take in the neighbors, the height, the everything, and you're stuck to a certain plan that fits that corner of your lot. Right now, your architecture drawings are costing up to $70,000 for your house. The survey's costing you $8,000. The excavation, digging, and planning on a little shithole home with 4 bedrooms, you let out $170,000. Now you imagine a big developer that, like Darren Braun with Blue Sky, on them signs that are hidden, puts hundreds of thousands of dollars out. You would have to pay Rob Isaac, the city engineering, to give you a guaranteed with the city manager and the city lawyer. And you would have to have the Abbotsford Police threatening you, because as soon as that takes place, he now breached the zoning bylaws that say it's got to be before the general public so the public can start inquiring. We don't want that, you're blocking my view. And you purposely hid that to get that zoning. And why did they hid it? Because the developer, if he gets a no from the general public, he's out all that money and he couldn't do that. So buying them friends of friends what were in there did that. That's why you don't want to do what the Abbotsford Police did, because my hands were very big. And it's organized crime. But what it should take place right away is the Abbotsford, what was shit, they're just garbage man with their big chest and their bullying, couldn't investigate. They didn't know nothing about law. They didn't know nothing about insider trading. So I wanted to make sure it was in front of them. But I want to make sure it was in front so the world could see it, Carney could see it and say, listen, all of you, everybody listen. The Liberals are in power federally, but all this shit in Abbotsford is all done under the federal Conservatives. All of it. And not a one of them have came to Ottawa, and stood up, not Ed Fast, not this loser Brad Viss, and stood up and told that. But when Dallas Brody gets in here, and you know I'm going to do it, I promised I would do it, and I'm going to do it, and get in here and do that. But I want to make sure to Abbotsford why I don't lean on the politicians. Why don't we do that? You saw what Mike DeYoung did, and you saw what Ed Fast did. They were Henry's best friends to block it and control it. And what they were doing is trapping the Abbotsford voters and taxpayers down. And look at the Funkstermeister. Let me tell you who's tied to the Funkstermeister. Henry Brown. Henry Brown was at the Hat Creek Ranch up there on his land with the Funkstermeister. And who else is tied to the Funkstermeister for their legal zoning? Ed Fast, son-in-law, Devon Roy, Pacific Peak Home. And so Ed couldn't come out and say, listen, Ross, listen, Henry, you changed the zoning from 200 to 400 without the fire department zoning, bylaws and everything. You cut the trees down, you cut the trees all down. You knocked the building with dust and asbestos and osmosis flying everywhere. You had no flaggers, no proper procedures to dump trucks and concrete trucks everywhere because you all were friends. But Ed couldn't do that because Ed's son-in-law owned it. So Ed figured the way was to shut his mouth, make a few phone calls. Henry, you got a few of them dirty officers, and call. So I want to make something clear, Abbotsford. I started this with Abbotsford homeowners thanks to the RCMP. And I said in the beginning when I started, Abbotsford wants the full weight of the law. I made it clear what a judge said. Nobody thinks at the end, you only think at the beginning. What they could get, like Rob Funk, he never thinks he's going to get caught or punished. And no one can use the law, bend the law, and no one's above it. And I made that promise with the RCMP that Henry Brown's richness, his money, could never buy me, and will take it all away. And I made it clear, and I've stood by it. I want to make sure that little shithole scab that they praised around Abbotsford, Mike Sir and Bob Rich, are brought back here and faced like every criminal for the attempted murder on my life, his officers that abused a sworn duty not to charge and everything get covered up. There's a lot of leaks. They're going to be in trouble. When this shit hits the fan, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what happens to them. The internal investigations start cranking up on them. They trace their private phones. They go through their houses. They go through that. It's endless. You're no sleep. Your wife start to worry what took place and everything else because the top come in because it's organized crime. And these little shithole officers that convinced the community they were really good investigators now have to lean on the last straw they got, their political politicians that were corrupt, using them. They used them for toilet paper so many times they couldn't stand up, and beg and see if they got enough power to push the David Eby to praise the Abbotsford police. You know what took place. Abbotsford politicians, locally, which are Bruce and all these, and federally, said, Mr. Pelican, Abbotsford homeowners, you've been through a lot, and we know that. And you've retained yourself and held your violence from breaking them faces open on all of them. Have your way on them. Light them up. Light the top investigators, light the task force up, the drug force, light the chief up, light them up. Have your revenge on them all. Show the world, every one of them, on what they did. That'll be better than punching them in the face. And I tend to agree. But I'm going to tell you what, none of this blame belongs on Carney. And that little chipmunk, Brad Viss, is tiptoeing around, and that's why he can't stand here on that. But the Abbotsford young youth start now. And you want to get in the housing market. Do not buy in the condo market right now. That there is going to be if you're watching it. And every mayor should be telling you that. Every mayor should be telling you. And this man will use his bank ties and his developers to sink you in debt. I don't want that to happen to young people starting out with a little family and everything else. Your shithole condo and these buildings will go from 600 when you remortgage on the second one to 200,000, and you're left with a massive thing. And old Funkstermeister is going to be giggling and laughing. Funkstermeister won't be giggling and laughing. I'm running for mayor of Abbotsford. I made a commitment to bring forensic audits in for the city, and I want her. That's where the dirty thing is all in. And the RCMP. That's the only thing I need to touch the city, and I can show you all the deals and everything because I can bring all the best in to help. And I want to do that for my community. My community stood by me. My community was always here. My community was witnesses and everything. I want to make sure Ed Fast doesn't enjoy his retirement, Mike DeYoung doesn't, and Brad Viss, I wiped that smile right off his face. and send him packing that Pierre Poilievre says he's not running in the federal conservatives and he has to dump him. Because that will send a message that you don't look away from these kinds of crimes on this magnitude, no matter how much money you were getting involved with. I'm live. Ron Funka the Verse Sage.